All right, let's look at our glial cells. So those glial cells are going to be these sidekicks to our superheroes that are the neuron. Remember that in nervous tissue, we have the functional unit of neurons, and then we have our glial cells. These are our helpers. These kind of do all of the support things that the neurons need. We are going to talk about 6 different types of glial cells and talk about whether they are found in the central nervous system or the peripheral nervous system. In your workbook, you have a little chart that has the list of the glial cells and then function and then location. So that location is either going to be central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. I might give you some specifics in here that you could add in if that will help you for lecture, but in lab you just need to know central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, as well as the functions. So let's start with our most abundant glial cell, and that's this bad boy right here. This is, let me not be in an eraser, and that would help, wouldn't it? This is my astrocyte. So the first glial cell we're going to talk about is an astrocyte. This is the most abundant glial cell within the central nervous system. CNS stands for central nervous system. The astrocyte does so much to help and benefit the neuron. So the astrocyte is going to help with making sure that it's getting the nutrients it needs. It's going to be making sure that different pathogens or things like that. It's not going to take out pathogens. We're going to talk about what the immune system, but it's going to prevent certain things from coming through because this type is going to create the blood-brain barrier. You'll learn more about that in lecture. But that blood-brain barrier is kind of what prohibits certain sized molecules and pathogens from actually even entering into the brain, via the blood, because that's how things would get into the brain most of the time is through the blood. So the astrocytes have a lot of different functions, but the main thing is that they are the most abundant and they are the support. They just support the neuron. They're my support staff. That's my astrocyte. Next, we have these cute little ones that kind of look like epithelial cells. Doesn't this sort of, if you thought of this being the lining, this kind of looks like an epithelial cell. It kind of looks like a simple columnar epithelial with just these extensions on the top, essentially. And it kind of is that. Its name is an ependymal cell. And the ependymal cells are going to line our ventricles. We're going to talk about the ventricles in a future video, but those ventricles are going to be where the cerebrospinal fluid is formed. So CSF stands for cerebrospinal fluid. And it is these ependymal cells that help create that cerebrospinal fluid. So essentially, it's this filtration process where it takes the nutrients and things that it finds in the blood and interstitial fluid from the rest of our body, and it's going to then, in the ventricles, create the cerebrospinal fluid. That cerebrospinal fluid is how the whole brain is getting nutrients and ions and all of that jazz. So that's the ependymal cells. So they're lining, so they kind of look like epithelial tissue because they're lining. This would be the ventricle. All right, our next one on our list, let's see what order I did go this order. This is a microglial cell. Oh, I didn't mention ventricles are within the central nervous system. So ependymal is also central nervous system. The microglial cells, this is my immune system for my central nervous system. This is my immune system related to my nervous system. This is going to be a macrophage that we are going to have in our brain, spinal cord, things like that. So this is what, when I do have an infection, this is what's attacking it. Unlike our blood, which you guys will learn when you get into blood, we have a bunch of different things. We have neutrophils, we have basophils, we have eosinophils, we have like all these different things. Here we have microglial cells. So within that nervous tissue, we have microglial cells, which are our immune system for the nervous system. Next, we're going to go down and I'm going to kind of show both of these right here, because these both have the same function. They just do it a little differently. First, we're going to start with big Ollie over here. This is my oligodendrocyte. Oligodendro. I always misspell it. That's why spelling doesn't always count. Oligodendrocyte. And then this one over here is my Schwann cell. What they are both doing, and you can see that in this image here, is creating those myelin sheaths. So both of their function is to myelinate. Remember that myelin is going to be what propagates or makes electrical signals or messages move from one neuron to the other faster. And that is why when we had white matter, that sends information faster than gray matter. And we want some things to go slow so that we have time to process, whereas where we just want to get the message across, that's when we want white matter. So like in the cerebrum itself, we have more gray matter inside, and then as we kind of send things out and down, we have more white matter on the outside. Okay, so oligodendrocytes. It's myelinating, but if you see, here's my nucleus, right? I have one cell here, but it is myelinating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It can myelinate up to 8 myelin sheaths. So it can make up to 8 of its own myelin sheaths. So it could even myelinate multiple neurons at a time. So this myelinates multiple sheaths. So it's creating multiple myelin sheaths. This occurs in my central nervous system. My Schwann cell is only found in my peripheral nervous system. And it is going to only myelinate. See how I have one cell for one myelin sheath. One cell from one myelin sheath. So in this picture, I have one oligodendrocyte. In this picture, I have 3 Schwann cells. So it myelinates 1-to-1 ratio. 1-to-1 ratio of myelin sheaths. So myelin sheaths to cell. Now, let's just kind of ask that question of why in my peripheral nervous system do I need a 1-to-1 ratio? In my central nervous system, I can have a 1-to-8 ratio. The reason for that, and in the peripheral nervous system, think about it. Could I just have this cell hanging out over here with all the other stuff that I have going on around my nerves? Think about the nerve that supplies my bicep brachii, which is the musculocutaneous nerve. That musculocutaneous nerve has muscles that are all around it. It has fascia all around it, right? It doesn't have all of this like luxury space to have a cell just dangling in the middle. And if this cell dangling in the middle gets hurt, we're screwed. Whereas central nervous system, we have a little bit more leeway because the only tissue we really have in the central nervous system is really brain tissue, is nervous tissue. So we have space for those neurons, for the soma of our neuron to hang on out. This isn't a neuron, sorry. To have the soma or the cell body of our oligodendrocyte to hang out. So hopefully that makes sense why in the central nervous system we have a 1-to-8 ratio, peripheral nervous system we have a 1-to-1 ratio. That is also why in the peripheral nervous system we can regenerate way better than we can in the central nervous system. Because if I take out one oligodendrocyte, I'm taking out 8 myelin sheaths. If I take out one Schwann cell, I'm taking out one myelin sheath. I'm not taking out as much. So we're able to propagate, or we're able to regenerate way more in the peripheral nervous system than the central nervous system. Our last glial cell is my satellite cell. I think I spelled that right. Satellite. Does satellite have? Well, we're going to go with it. It's spelled out for you guys there. The satellite cell. It looks wrong to me, but it's okay. The satellite cell, you will see, so here this is showing the light yellow. This is actually the cell body to a neuron. And we can see the satellite cell is this darker yellow. Okay, so this whole thing is not the satellite cell. It's just this little, think of it like a leech on the side of the neuron. So it actually attaches itself to the soma of the peripheral nerve. So peripheral nervous system. And it is going to be kind of like the astrocyte for my peripheral nerves. So it's going to be general support for my peripheral nervous system. So my astrocyte was my general support for my central nervous system. Satellite cell is the general support for my peripheral nervous system. Now I have this image. I drew these kind of just to show what it looks like if I put all of the glial cells together. Now, of course, this is not like exactly what it looks like, but this is just an illustration of kind of showing you where you find things. So if we look, this is in the central nervous system. So here I have my astrocyte, and see how it's creating that blood-brain barrier. It's also just doing general support. Here I have those microglial that are kind of monitoring and looking for immune response. Those are the ependymal that are on lining the ventricle. And then this is that oligodendrocyte who is creating a heck of a lot of myelin sheaths. And this, of course, is my neuron. On this one, we're looking at a peripheral nerve. And with that, around my soma, we have our satellite cells. And then attached to 1-to-1 ratio with the myelin sheaths are my Schwann cells. So that is putting it together. That is nervous tissue. So go ahead, make sure that you finish up, do your knowledge checks, and then you can head on over to our second topic, which is the overview of the brain.